Hello and welcome to IC Show TV. I'm Paul Milligan. This is the latest of our panel discussions at IC 2019. Today's topic is, what will the Office of 2025 look like? Today I'm joined by, to my immediate right, is Brad Grimes from AVIXA. In the middle is Jane Hammersley from Maverick AV Solutions.
Thank you.
And at the end is Christian Bozeat from macom. So, they say predicting is a mug's game, so I'm here to make you all look a bit silly.
Thanks.
But what do we
Fantastic.
think the Office of 2025 will look like? Brad, maybe you, do we think there's going to be big changes or subtle changes?
Well, I think the most important thing to understand is that it will exist. I mean, I think the notion that offices were going to get all broken up and everyone was going to be remote, and that's not what's going to happen.
Okay.
The office, if you ask me, is going to become even more important. We already see companies that have promoted remote workers for a long time, bring some of them back into an office space because work, as many more eloquent people have said than I, isn't something you do anymore, isn't some place you go anymore, it's something you do. And the office is going to reflect how each and every individual company collaborates, how it's structured. Are you a hierarchical office, so you'll have a lot of conference rooms, or are you more of a collaborative office? So I think they're going to be important. Clearly technology is going to enable whatever a company chooses their office to look like, and they're going to be very important components, and we're going to play a big role in them.
Yeah.
Do you think we're in for big changes, Jane, or kind of more subtle, smaller ones?
Yeah, I do actually. I think we're going to be in for some huge changes as we move forward. I think we've got to decide on what humans want to do in offices, because it's actually about people. People are what create the outputs from organisations. So what does humans do we want to do? We talk about work-life balance. We don't. We talk like work-life integration. So if we talk work-life integration, what does the office need to do for us? And I think it's very much to almost full circle. We're going to go back to community time, and the office has got to work for us. In fact, in some McDonald's these days, ironically, you can go in and get a personalised burger based on your taste anywhere in the world. Why can't that office then be personalised for me in the way I like to work? I like to be more collaborative, so the office then should be set up that way. So I think we're going to have much more personalised office spaces with collaboration environments when and where we need them, and certainly not the very structured office spaces that we kind of moved away from. And there was a great quote I heard from Jess Kimball. She said that never before has organisations tried to employ so few people, right? So if we're employing less people, we'll talk the gig economy, they're working in different places, then the office, the environment we have to work in also has to reflect that as well. So there's lots of factors in there, but I think we're in for big changes.
Christian, we've heard the sort of trade organisations' ideas and distributors' views. You come from the AV consultancy world. Where do you stand on the future of the office?
I'm hoping there are going to be changes.
Yeah,
I really am. I think that right now we're on the cusp of a lot of those changes. I think Jane's right. The change in the type of spaces, how much more personalised it is for business. I'm also hoping that businesses are going to take technology more seriously. And I really see that they won't have any option to do that by 2025. At the moment, we're in that point where IT is still very important, but AV technology often is pushed to the back. As a consultant, it's a project, we've got a new building, quick, come in and throw some stuff on walls for us. But I believe there's a change where, certainly we're trying to drive that change, that people think more about this technology, how it's deployed, how it's utilized, to bring that leverage that the technology can to your productivity. So I'm hoping that the workspaces will be more productive in the future. And there'll be nicer environments to work in. And I do see a decline in the requirement with some of the great technologies out there, beamforming microphones and collaborative software tools and interactive screens. I see a massive decline in the actual need for meeting spaces. I mean, sectioned off meeting rooms.
Yes.
But to do that, I also think that the construction process and the design process from the architectural side of things will have to change. So those are the things that I see. I think that the meeting space will be far more interesting in 2025 because it'll be being delivered in a different way.
I think what is interesting, and you picked up on it, we refer more to spaces than rooms.
Yeah.
So we're actually making the whole change now. Convenience is a new loyalty. So if we talk about why we work for our organisations that we work for, technology is probably going to be transparent, and I think it has to be, because that breeds adoption. If we go in and it works, whatever the thing is on the wall or the camera, we're likely to use it again. And we're likely to stay in that organisation because we feel value, because the whole thing works properly together. So I think it's going to happen.
I mean, the last 5 years we've seen a real growth in less formal spaces, more open spaces. You kind of mentioned on it there. Do we see that continuing?
I definitely think that that's going to happen. I think that as you start to make these processes, so if you imagine that a working collaborative environment, an agile space used to be a whiteboard with some sticky notes. Now it's an interactive space that can be there. It can be across multiple different time zones and nations and businesses. One of the things that's going to happen to that in that open space is that the operational process has to change in that. So I see more people in the AV industry being required, because you can't support those sorts of tools from fully remotely. Like an IT piece, it's a person in front of a laptop. So I think the change will be into those spaces, but they're going to have more people employed within a business to be able to look after and help people to utilize those tools. Because if you train somebody to use something, doesn't mean they're going to. You have to actually change their working process. And if it becomes business critical, you've got to support it. So I see a lot of change in that and bringing that open space out.
Brad, you guys are great at sort of pulling together data and things. Is there data to support the growth of open spaces, less formal spaces? We're moving away from giant meeting rooms to huddle rooms and things like that. Is there sort of data to back that up?
Well,
or not yet?
Not per se. I mean, there's a lot of data on the way the way companies are approaching I mean, it's already telling that we call them workspaces more than we call them offices now.
Exactly.
And I don't want to be the most vanilla I can be, but a lot of it depends, and it's really going to depend on the type of work you're trying to accomplish, how collaborative. I mean, you may have 30 huddle spaces across your company if that's the way that your company works, if they collaborate with people. And all these rooms, all these spaces are still going to be connected. Don't get me wrong that there's always going to be a remote resource or partner or something like that, so everything is going to have to be connected. But it really depends. I mean, there are going to be lots of companies, because of the nature of the work they do and the way that they collaborate or the way they get things done, that will be welcoming to very open spaces. And there are going to be others that have different types of spaces. I've heard how Microsoft is redoing their campus, and they've got rooms for thinking, they've got rooms for collaborating, they've
innovation
got
labs,
that's right.
they've got touchdown spaces.
It's very much about gathering the requirements from a business. And I think that one of the things that will change is that at the moment, when you get a design from a space, from a consultancy perspective, here's the space, here's all the meeting rooms. And we say, well, how did you determine that's what you needed? And that's what we've always had. So when we say, the spaces are, we've got 30 huddle rooms because that's how your business works. I think one of the things is actually understanding what you can do to improve that. So we're starting very much to look at work process and workflow to understand what the different departments do, because you're still going to need a boardroom. It's not a collaborative environment necessarily, because the collaboration has been done to prepare the work to get to the boardroom and present. It has a requirement for that. There'll be smaller video conferencing rooms. We don't know exactly what they're going to be. And as you say, each business has a different requirement. I think one of the things that we can do as an industry to help that change is to help people understand that they can work in different ways. I think there's help them understand what's available.
Totally right.
Yeah, I think your role is more important than it's ever been, because we do have these technology solutions that we talk a lot about, and people will say, I want 30 huddle spaces, but like you say, the question is, why do you want 30 huddle spaces? I mean, I can build you 30 huddle spaces, I'll do it. You may never talk to me again if it doesn't work for you. But an AV person will understand that that's not really the requirement. The requirement is how you accomplish your work, and let's have that discussion first.
And then map the technology to leverage
meeting outcomes. What do we want? What are the outcome from that space, right? I think the latest research I said, by 2025, 50% of the jobs that exist in 2025 do not exist now.
Right.
Yeah,
So
very
what we
true.
do know is we don't know what's going to exist in 25, right?
That's
So
very
we
true.
don't know. But actually, we do know that people are striving for better productivity, better meeting outcomes,
Yep.
and therefore we need to design the spaces that fit around that.
Yep.
I'm going to slightly disagree with your point about more people to manage that, because I think we're going to have an on-demand, 24/7 environment you walk into and it just works, right? And it's probably going to be managed remotely somewhere, possibly on a single network.
Yeah, we've just put out into the marketplace a management layer. We don't provide the boots on the ground with the feet on the space, but I think that when you're working in a computer environment, when it's you and the remote management piece, that's very easily you working in that. Now the technology will get better. It will, if it's designed properly and installed correctly,
absolutely.
it will perform better. But there is still a requirement. If there's 6 people in a room, the human, and I still don't think you'll have broken that. I think it will be better because of the people coming through into the working environment, but there's still a requirement. It's not their job role to make sure that functions. So actually there's a physical element of that can't be remotely changed. You've still got to be able to take things off wall and replace it. There's still going to be that element.
I think there'll be an element. I think there'll be much more MDM devices.
I don't disagree with you.
That's going to just increase. And hopefully we'll have more meeting spaces.
But to have that, you've got to have the businesses take it seriously and put the infrastructure in now and start to understand that they want to move towards that remote management piece, and actually to be able to put the infrastructure and the structures in place.
And I think we're seeing that change now. And I certainly feel that we're having an organisation that's looking at not just how the meeting spaces work, but how they're going to be managed properly.
Yep.
And consistently and globally.
Yeah.
And more now is that global conversation, because it's not physical location.
I used to see when I was earlier in my career, I'd get documents that came out that said, and we'd like a 4-hour and an 8-hour call out, please.
Response rate.
And now we won't actually do that in our documentation. We'll do the design, the strategy, whatever, but the operational piece is pulled out as a completely separate process, because again, that needs to be designed to meet the needs of that space. And so you're right, in 2025, people have taken it more seriously. They'll have a more streamlined approach.
Shift.
It will have changed. It will be taken more seriously, and I think that's important for our industry, that we need to
embrace that. We need to be ahead of that curve and
and
offer that right solution. Yeah, agreed.
And the final thing I wanted to touch on, we've seen the growth in the last few years of products that are more mobile, more flexible, more agile to fit in with changing work patterns and work behaviours and things. Do we see that happening on the sort of product side? Is that where the sort of demand is for products like that?
Well, I think something that's going to take place is that workspace or work applications or work systems are going to be more self-service. Mm-hmm. I mean, that people are going to go into a room and they're going to call up whatever applications they want to, again, work the way they're going to work that day to accomplish whatever the goal of that meeting is. And I think that's going to be a challenge, because as you said, I mean, it doesn't always work, and you do have to manage these things. But I think there's going to be this demand in a electronics and communications world that is very self-service for that to take place in the workspace. So when you walk into a room, you'll be able to call up whatever resources you need, and the expectation will be that it works. And I think that's going to be a challenge, and we're here for it.
Christian mentioned that workflow collaboration. We need to know whatever we do in our working environment just works. Yep. Whether we're a desktop, whether we're in a meeting space, we're in a coffee shop. Yep. So that whole seamless integration, you're absolutely right. Yeah. Now, there's some recent research, you've probably seen this, but 62% of organizations like our own will use 3 or more UC platforms. 3 or more. Now that gives all of us a challenge, because we can't just fix an environment to a particular platform now. We've got to make it flexible, so if we're all using separate platforms, we want to work the way we work, and that space needs to adapt to us. But actually knowing that and now translating that into the solutions that we provide, I think is ultimately important. So we need to deliver the right meeting outcome.
I agree. That's exactly the way that's going.
Yep.
Fantastic. I'd like to thank you all for coming and join us for the next panel discussion. Thank you very much.